The mall that shouldn't exist. There are places in America that people avoid talking about, not because they are secret, but because everyone who knows about them is terrified. Deep in the forests outside a small town in Oregon stood an abandoned shopping mall called Ravenwood Mall. For more than 20 years, it had remained empty. No customers entered, no workers returned, no security guards ever patrolled its halls again. Yet strange stories continued to spread. Hunters claimed they saw lights glowing through the trees late at night. Travelers reported hearing old music drifting through the forest. Some even swore they saw people walking inside the mall's shattered windows. The strangest part was that, according to official records, Ravenwood Mall had burned down years ago. It shouldn't have existed anymore. But every Halloween night, something impossible happened. The mall appeared again, waiting silently in the darkness for new visitors. Jake, Sarah, Ethan, Lily, and Marcus were college students from Portland who loved exploring abandoned places. They had visited forgotten factories, empty schools, and ruined hospitals without ever experiencing anything truly frightening. When Marcus discovered an online forum discussing Ravenwood Mall, he immediately shared it with the group. Most people online described it as a ghost story, but Marcus thought it was nonsense. The more warnings they read, the more interested they became. According to local legends, anyone who entered the mall on Halloween night would never return. Instead of being scared, the group became excited. They packed cameras, flashlights, extra batteries, and snacks before setting out just before midnight. None of them realized that this decision would completely change their lives forever. At exactly 12:13 a.m., their car emerged from the forest road and entered a massive clearing. Everyone became silent. Standing in front of them was Ravenwood Mall. The building was enormous. Its faded neon sign flickered weakly in the darkness. Dust covered the windows, yet lights glowed inside. The internet photos they had seen showed only burned ruins, but the structure before them looked strangely intact. Old music echoed softly across the empty parking lot. A cold wind moved through the trees. Jake parked the car and stepped outside. For the first time that night, nobody joked. Nobody laughed. Something about the building felt wrong. It looked less like an abandoned mall and more like a place waiting for them to arrive. As the group approached the entrance, something impossible happened. The automatic doors slowly slid open by themselves. There was no electricity connected to the building, yet the doors welcomed them inside. Sarah immediately felt uneasy and suggested turning back, but nobody listened. Jake entered first. The smell inside was overwhelming. Dust, mold, old perfume, rotting food, and something metallic lingered in the air. The mall appeared frozen in time. Store signs still hung from the ceiling. Decorative plants remained in place. Escalators stood silent. The moment all 5 friends stepped inside, the entrance doors slammed shut behind them with a loud crash that echoed through the empty building. At first, the mall seemed empty. Then, Ethan noticed movement near a clothing store. A person stood completely motionless inside. Seconds later, another figure appeared farther down the hallway. Then another. Soon, dozens of people could be seen scattered throughout the mall. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Their faces remained hidden in darkness. Jake called out to them several times but received no answer. The figures simply stood there, watching. Then, without warning, every single head slowly turned toward the group at the exact same moment. The silence became unbearable. Sarah felt a chill run through her body as she realized that none of the figures were blinking. Trying to prove the figures were part of a prank,
Marcus confidently walked toward the nearest one. The others warned him not to, but he ignored them. He reached out and touched the figure's shoulder. Instantly, the figure vanished. At exactly the same moment, Marcus disappeared too. There was no flash of light, no sound, no scream. 1 second he stood there, and the next he was gone. The group froze in disbelief. Then a whisper echoed through the mall. The voice sounded old and distant. It seemed to come from every direction at once. The whisper spoke only 2 words. "Welcome back." Suddenly, the darkness around them felt alive. Panic took over as the remaining friends ran deeper into the mall, searching for Marcus. They eventually reached the food court and stopped in horror. Hundreds of people sat at the tables. Every seat was occupied. Rotten food covered trays and plates. Mold spread across old meals. Black liquid dripped from cups. Yet the diners continued eating slowly and mechanically. Their movements looked unnatural. None of them spoke. None acknowledged each other.
Then one elderly man lifted his head. His eyes were completely black. A disturbing smile spread across his face. Moments later, every diner stopped eating and turned toward the newcomers. Jake, Sarah, Ethan, and Lily ran from the food court as the black-eyed diners slowly stood from their seats. The sound of hundreds of chairs scraping across the floor echoed through the mall. Desperate to find answers, the group followed signs leading to the security office. After forcing open a heavy metal door, they entered a dark room filled with old surveillance monitors. Dust covered every surface, yet the screens were somehow still working. Dozens of cameras displayed different parts of the mall. At first, nothing seemed unusual. Then, Jake noticed something horrifying. Every monitor showed a different year. One displayed footage from 1988. Another showed 1997. Another showed 2005. People entered Ravenwood Mall on every screen. Families, teenagers, employees, and shoppers walked through the doors. But not a single person was ever shown leaving. Then Sarah pointed toward the largest monitor. It showed the 4 of them standing inside the security room at that exact moment. The problem was that the camera angle was impossible. There was no camera inside the room. Suddenly the image flickered. Sarah vanished from the screen. A second later, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room completely. The only sound was Sarah screaming somewhere nearby. Jake reached for his flashlight and switched it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing overturned chairs and flickering monitors. Sarah was gone. The metal door stood wide open. Her screams echoed down the hallway outside. Jake rushed after her despite Lily's warnings. The hallway seemed longer than before. Every step made the screams sound farther away. Then they suddenly stopped. Complete silence returned. Jake found Sarah's flashlight lying on the floor beside a trail of muddy footprints. The footprints were enormous, almost twice the size of a normal human foot. Whatever had taken Sarah was still nearby. Following the footprints, the group reached an old toy store called Happy Kids Toy World. Bright colors still decorated the entrance, despite decades of decay. Children's music played softly from hidden speakers somewhere inside. Thousands of toys covered the shelves. Dolls sat in perfect rows. Teddy bears stared from display cases. Toy trains rested on dusty tracks. Everything seemed frozen in time. Ethan nervously joked that the place looked creepier than the rest of the mall combined. Then he noticed something strange. Every doll in the store appeared to be looking directly at him. No matter where he moved, their glass eyes followed him. The unsettling feeling grew stronger with every second. Near the center of the toy store stood a single doll wearing a bright red dress. Unlike the others, it looked almost new. Its skin appeared realistic. Its eyes looked alive. Jake pointed his flashlight at it and stepped closer. The doll's face resembled a real child. For a brief moment, he thought he saw it blink. Ethan laughed and said the stress was making them imagine things. He turned away for only a second. When he looked back, the doll was gone. The shelf where it had stood was empty. A cold sensation moved through the room. Then Lily slowly pointed behind Ethan. Standing directly behind him was the doll, smiling. The smile on the doll's face widened unnaturally. Then every toy in the store began moving. Dolls climbed from shelves, teddy bears crawled across the floor, toy cars drove by themselves. Hundreds of tiny footsteps echoed throughout the store. The group ran toward the exit as thousands of toys chased them. Tiny hands grabbed their shoes. Plastic faces stared up from the darkness. The toy store transformed into a nightmare. Jake smashed through the front doors and escaped into the mall corridor. The others followed seconds later. Behind them, the toys gathered silently near the entrance, watching them leave. Exhausted and terrified, the group spotted an old elevator at the end of the corridor. Its doors were already open. Without thinking, they rushed inside and repeatedly pressed the close button. The doors slammed shut just before the toy creatures reached them. For several moments, everything seemed quiet. Then the elevator started moving, first upward, then downward, then sideways. The floor indicator above the door flashed strange numbers: 2, 5, 9, 11. Finally, it stopped on floor 13. None of them remembered Ravenwood Mall having a 13th floor. Slowly, the doors opened. Beyond the elevator stretched a long hallway covered entirely with photographs. Thousands upon thousands of pictures filled every wall. Missing children, missing adults, missing families. Every photo showed someone standing inside Ravenwood Mall. Some images were decades old. Others looked recent. Ethan examined a photograph near the end of the corridor and felt his blood run cold. It was a picture of Marcus. The photo had clearly been taken after he disappeared. A few feet away hung another picture showing Sarah. Then Jake found something even worse. A photograph of himself, taken only minutes earlier. Beneath the image was a date, tomorrow's date. The light suddenly flickered. Heavy footsteps echoed from somewhere ahead. Slowly, a figure emerged from the darkness. At first, it looked like an ordinary mall security guard. Then it stepped closer. The creature was nearly 10 feet tall. Its uniform appeared burned and melted into its skin. One eye was missing. The other glowed bright white. A broken radio hung from its shoulder, endlessly repeating the same message. "Attention shoppers, Ravenwood Mall will be closing in 5 minutes. The creature tilted its head toward the group. Then it began walking faster. Within seconds, it was charging directly at them. The giant security guard charged down the hallway with terrifying speed. The entire floor shook beneath its footsteps. Jake, Ethan, and Lily turned and ran as fast as they could. Behind them, the monster smashed through walls and store windows as if they were made of paper. Its broken radio continued repeating the same message over and over again. "Attention shoppers, Ravenwood Mall will be closing in 5 minutes. The voice sounded distorted and unnatural. Every few seconds, the creature gained more ground. Jake looked back and saw its glowing eye locked directly onto them. It wasn't chasing randomly. It had chosen them, and it wasn't going to stop until it caught them. As the group raced through the dark corridor, Ethan tripped over a broken section of flooring and crashed hard onto the ground. Pain shot through his leg. Jake immediately stopped and tried helping him up, but the security guard was already approaching. The monster's shadow stretched across the hallway. Ethan looked up and saw the creature standing directly over him. For a moment, everything became silent. The monster slowly tilted its head. Its broken radio crackled. Then the light suddenly went out. Ethan's terrified scream echoed through the darkness. When the emergency lights returned seconds later, Ethan was gone. Only his flashlight remained, spinning slowly across the floor. Jake stared at the empty floor where Ethan had disappeared. His heart pounded violently inside his chest. He wanted to search for his friend, but Lily grabbed his arm and pulled him away. Tears filled her eyes. For the first time that night, neither of them could deny the truth. Marcus was gone. Sarah was gone. Ethan was gone. The mall was taking them one by one. Somewhere deep inside Ravenwood Mall, something was hunting them. And every minute they stayed inside increased their chances of becoming the next victims.
As Jake and Lily searched desperately for another exit, they heard laughter echoing through the empty mall. Children's laughter. The sound seemed strangely cheerful compared to everything else around them. Following the noise, they arrived at an indoor playground hidden behind an old restaurant. Swings moved gently by themselves. A carousel slowly rotated despite having no power. Dozens of children stood scattered around the playground. Their clothes came from different decades. Some wore styles from the 1980s, others looked like they belonged in the 1990s or early 2000s. None of the children appeared alive, yet none looked completely dead either. One small girl stepped forward from the crowd. She looked no older than 8 years old. Unlike the other children, her face showed genuine sadness. She stared directly at Jake before quietly speaking. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." Jake asked who she was and what had happened to everyone. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She explained that all the children had entered Ravenwood Mall years ago and never escaped. The mall kept them trapped forever. Before Jake could ask another question, the girl leaned closer and whispered something that chilled him to the bone. "The mall is alive." The ghost children revealed a horrifying secret. Ravenwood Mall wasn't haunted by spirits. The building itself was the monster. Something ancient lived beneath the structure. It fed on fear, memories, and human souls. Every Halloween night, the mall returned to lure new victims inside. Once someone entered, the building slowly absorbed them. Their memories became part of the walls. Their voices became part of the whispers. Their souls remained trapped forever. Jake struggled to believe what he was hearing, but deep down he already knew it was true. Nothing else could explain the horrors they had witnessed. The little girl pointed toward a maintenance door hidden behind the playground. According to her, it led to the oldest part of the mall. Jake and Lily opened the rusted door and discovered a narrow tunnel descending deep underground. The air inside felt colder than anything they had experienced before. Strange symbols covered the walls. Some appeared scratched into the concrete by human hands. Others looked far older. The deeper they traveled, the louder the distant whispers became. It felt as though thousands of unseen voices were speaking all at once, somewhere beneath them. After walking for nearly 20 minutes, Jake and Lily reached a massive underground chamber. The space was far larger than it should have been. Ancient stone pillars supported the ceiling. Strange markings covered every surface. In the center stood dozens of rusted cages. Some were empty. Others contained old clothing, broken toys, and personal belongings left behind by previous victims. It looked like people had once been imprisoned there. The realization made Jake sick. Whatever existed beneath Ravenwood Mall had been feeding for a very long time. Along one side of the chamber stretched a gigantic wall covered with names. Thousands upon thousands of names had been carved into the stone. Jake ran his flashlight across the surface. Every missing person connected to Ravenwood Mall appeared to be listed there. The names stretched back decades. Then he spotted something horrifying near the bottom. Marcus, Sarah, Ethan. Their names had already been added. As Jake stared in disbelief, another name slowly appeared beneath them as though invisible hands were carving it into the rock. The name was Lily. Lily stepped away from the wall in fear. Suddenly, the chamber became completely silent. The whispers stopped. The air felt heavy. Jake sensed that something enormous was nearby. Slowly, he turned his flashlight toward the darkness beyond the chamber. At first, he saw nothing. Then two gigantic eyes opened far away in the shadows. They were larger than car headlights. The eyes blinked once and focused directly on him. Neither Jake nor Lily moved. Deep underground, beneath Ravenwood Mall, something ancient had finally noticed them. The gigantic eyes remained fixed on Jake and Lily from deep within the darkness. Neither of them dared move. The creature's gaze felt unnatural, as if it could see every memory they had ever experienced. Slowly, the enormous shape emerged from the shadows. It wasn't a single monster. It was something far worse. The darkness itself seemed alive. Thousands of faces appeared and disappeared across its surface. Faces of children, adults, elderly people. Every victim who had ever vanished inside Ravenwood Mall seemed trapped within the creature's body. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber. It did not come from the monster's mouth. Instead, it appeared directly inside their minds. The voice whispered a single command. Stay. A slow clap echoed through the chamber. Jake turned toward the sound and saw a man standing beside one of the ancient pillars. He wore an old black suit, untouched by time. His appearance matched the photographs they had discovered earlier. Victor Raven, the founder of Ravenwood Mall. The man smiled calmly despite the monstrous creature behind him. Victor explained that he had built the mall directly above the ancient entity decades ago. In exchange for wealth and power, he had promised the creature a steady supply of souls. Every customer who entered the mall became an offering. Every disappearance strengthened the entity beneath the building. Victor led them deeper underground. Beyond the chamber lay something impossible. An entire city hidden beneath Ravenwood Mall. Streets stretched into darkness. Buildings lined empty roads. Street lamps flickered weakly despite having no source of power. The city looked abandoned, yet Jake constantly felt watched. Victor revealed that this underground world had once been a real town centuries ago. The entity beneath the earth had consumed it completely. Since then, every victim taken by the mall became part of the lost city forever. As they crossed one of the deserted streets, a familiar voice called Jake's name. Standing beneath a flickering lamp was Marcus. He looked exactly the same as the night he disappeared. For a moment, Jake felt overwhelming relief. He rushed toward his friend. But Lily immediately sensed something was wrong. Marcus wasn't blinking. His smile never changed. Then his neck slowly twisted sideways until it rotated completely around. Bones cracked loudly. Yet Marcus continued smiling. The thing standing before them wasn't Marcus anymore. Marcus's body suddenly stretched and expanded. His skin split apart like paper. Long black limbs burst from his back. Rows of razor-sharp teeth filled his mouth. The creature screamed and charged toward them. Jake and Lily ran through the underground streets while the monster smashed through buildings behind them. Every shadow seemed alive. Every alleyway contained movement. It felt as if the entire underground city was waking up. Eventually, Jake and Lily reached an old metal gate leading back toward the surface tunnels. Unfortunately, the monster had already caught up. There was no time left. Lily looked at Jake and made her decision. Before he could stop her, she shoved him through the gate and slammed it shut behind him. Jake screamed and pounded on the metal bars, but Lily refused to open them. Tears filled her eyes as she smiled one final time. Then she turned to face the approaching monster, alone. The last thing Jake heard before being dragged away by the collapsing tunnel was Lily shouting, "Run!" Heartbroken and alone, Jake continued deeper into the tunnels until he reached the center of the underground world. There, he discovered the true heart of Ravenwood Mall. Suspended above a massive pit floated the giant entity itself. Thousands of black veins connected it to the walls, floor, and ceiling. The entire mall existed as part of its body. Every corridor, every store, every room served as an extension of the creature. Jake finally understood the horrifying truth. The mall wasn't built over the monster. The monster was the mall. Remembering the original fire that supposedly destroyed Ravenwood Mall years ago, Jake found several fuel containers stored nearby. Working quickly, he poured fuel across the chamber. Victor Raven appeared and tried stopping him, but Jake ignored the threats. Taking a deep breath, he struck a match. For a brief moment, the tiny flame illuminated the darkness. Then he dropped it. Fire exploded across the chamber. Flames raced along the black veins connected to the monster. The entity released a scream unlike anything Jake had ever heard. The underground city began collapsing. Buildings crumbled. Roads split apart. The monster's body burned as trapped souls escaped from within it. Thousands of glowing spirits filled the air. Victor Raven desperately tried reaching the creature, but the freed souls surrounded him. Decades of victims finally took their revenge. The immortal founder disappeared beneath a storm of ghostly figures as the entire underground world collapsed around him. Jake ran through collapsing tunnels as rocks crashed around him. Fire consumed everything behind him. Every step felt impossible. Finally, he saw moonlight ahead. With the last of his strength, he emerged from the tunnel and collapsed onto the forest floor. Moments later, the earth shook violently. A deafening roar echoed through the trees. Then the ground collapsed inward. The underground city vanished forever. Ravenwood Mall was gone. Years later, Jake had built a normal life. He tried forgetting everything that happened inside Ravenwood Mall. Then one Halloween evening, a package arrived at his home. Inside was a photograph. The image showed Ravenwood Mall standing exactly as it had before its destruction. Marcus, Sarah, Ethan, and Lily stood outside the entrance, smiling. On the back of the photograph were 4 chilling words. "We're still inside." The next morning, Jake drove back to the Oregon forest. When he reached the old location, his blood turned cold. Standing among the trees was a bright new sign. "Grand opening, Ravenwood Mall." The automatic doors slowly opened. Waiting. Watching. Hungry. And despite everything that had happened, the mall had returned. The end.